Cool. Well, hey man, thanks for doing this.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. Been looking forward to it actually. We spoke briefly. I don't know when it was the first time we chatted, but
I'm not sure. It must be like at least a year ago.
yeah, if not more. Yeah, you were sort of acting as a intermediary between me and Will. That's I think how we first.
Right. Oh yeah. I'm trying to be like the peace bringer. If that's
Yeah, that's what it felt like too. And like I could tell right away you had a really sort of calm, gentle personality. And
I like to think so. It helps living with a cat.
oh, right. Yeah, I don't have any pets, but I do like cats more than dogs, I'm afraid to say.
Kind of like them both the same, actually.
Well, that's
like,
good.
Between chorus and wah, you can have them both.
Right. Yeah, I guess I don't need to decide which one I like better, but
yeah, it's all good. Yeah, no, I just think that a community, I mean, well, any community, but especially one where we as guitarists and like Chili Peppers fans, we're all aiming for the same thing. We all want the same outcome, and that is to be satisfied with our guitar sound and to like connect with people who share the same passion. And I think it's really easy for there to become like rivalries and stuff in that kind of sector, whether that's this pedal's the same as that pedal, or this guy's copying my guitar rig, or like this guy played it better than this guy. And it's like, I think we just should all appreciate what everyone does.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. And I feel the same way. Although I think it's easy to like become a victim of that sort of mindset. Like it's not always so easy to, I think part of that's a little subconscious.
Like the imagination's very strong. Like it's really easy to like build up an assumption of something in your head and make it way more of a big deal than it actually is. Like, and so much stuff is like coincidence as well.
Yeah, I've been catching myself lately having to tell myself that it's good to have the self-awareness to realize, like, especially when it comes to something about communicating with another person, like you're still responsible for your half of that. Like if you just go on like with a bunch of stuff in your head, you kind of make that true, even if it isn't, and that's not communicated, and how you feel isn't communicated. Like you're just making these assumptions about how the other person feels.
Yeah, man,
a really good way to go about it.
Like it's like having a dream about someone, and they do something bad in your dream, and then you wake up, but you still hold a grudge.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
But yeah, no, I think at the end of the day, we're all copying John anyway. So
right, that's what I was gonna say when you were saying about like so and so's copying my pedal board or whatever. Like, I guess it comes down to like, if you're gonna be jealous of somebody else or have like feelings of a rivalry, it would be more like I copied it better or something like that,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I guess it's just like, why are we here? Like we're all here with the same end goal in mind. Like I was saying, like it doesn't matter if someone else is doing the same thing. Like, I'm not the only guy who's uploaded Chili Peppers covers to YouTube. You're not the only guy who's made an orange pedal.
Yeah. Or uploaded Chili Pepper covers to YouTube.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I noticed your videos go like quite a while back. I was just like briefly checking out your channel again before We had this conversation, and I think your first videos are like 11, 12 years ago.
Yeah, I started off a long time ago.
And you've got a pretty huge pedal board already, like, and some of the Moog pedals. It's really cool.
With like two kind of, it was like two separate boards then, the same size, and now it's exactly half of that. It's just here, it's just out of shop. But I'm just using like half of that board, and then ended up adding a little extension now for like my expression pedals, and I picked up the Line 6 EHX effects, and it's really
okay, so I got a couple of questions about the pedal board then. What made you want to just make a smaller one? Like, what was your intention behind that?
At the time, I was playing quite a lot of gigs with the band that I was in, and it just became so annoying. I mean, the transportation of it was like frustrating in itself, like, and making sure that nothing was like loaded on top of them and everything. But you know, you have to be aware of like the size of the stage of the venues you're going to be playing. Sometimes you were fine, and I could have used something even like twice as big again. And there were other times where, you know, I'd have to have it on like an awkward like L shape at the side, one against the wall, one at the front, and it became like just a bit of a joke.
Right.
And I think something else that helped is like over time, pedals have got smaller, so you can fit a lot more onto one pedal board. But then there were also like mini versions of pedals which I already was using, I guess. I mean, I don't really have many examples of that on here now because like everything's changed since then. I mean, well, I guess a good example is like the Moog low pass filter. You know, one of those with the control voltage LFO thing.
Right.
That's like an entire pedal board by itself. So now I could use that Barbanera that Will makes,
right,
which is literally the low pass filter and the CP251 and like 6 more waveforms in one small box. So
right. Yeah, that definitely is going to save a lot of space right there.
But it's packed. There is not. I mean, like if you actually looked at my board, then there was a lot of empty space that was kind of too awkward to fit anything in, but it was there. But now you wouldn't even know what color the board was. It's completely loaded.
I imagine it took you several iterations to get there, though.
It did, and that isn't to say that it's done now. You know, like
right.
Forever evolving. You think it's done. You think you're completely happy, and then someone brings out something new, or you discover a YouTube video from 1920 with an amazing fuzz pedal that you've never heard.
Right. Yeah, I guess I wouldn't say mine's done either, but I do feel like it's at a good point where I'm most satisfied with it.
I guess it can only ever be as done as what you want at that moment.
Yeah.
Because you might want like a completely different sound available to you in a year, which might need some changing around.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I went through a process of like similar thing for me to ask you, why do you want a smaller board? I think it's a pretty obvious answer. Like, it's kind of cumbersome to have some huge thing to move it around. And
yeah, but then at the same time, like, I haven't really gigged almost at all with this smaller board. So most of the time I'm like not even playing it with shoes on. It's all been like studio work. So it might be that one day I take it out for a show and realize that I'm like switching 5 pedals on instead of 1.
Right. I guess then, like, do you use any sort of switching system? You're going through all the pedals?
I use a really basic system, which is that, let's say like half of the pedals are just in line. They're always in train. And then I just use like a triple true bypass looper. So it's just like 3 true bypass loops in one.
Yeah.
And in the first loop is this Electro-Harmonix Pitch Fork, which is in that loop because if it's not, it gives you like a horrible digital buzz when it's bypassed. It's something to do with the buffer they use. So I need that out of the signal chain for that reason. And then I've got the kind of main drive section with like the DS2, the big Muff, the Fuzzrite, the WH10. They're all in one loop together, which I guess was kind of inspired by back in the days. John used the that red Boss.
Yeah, the PSM5.
Yeah, I've got one of those around here somewhere. Because that, that's just really convenient because it means you can just go from like clean to full on solo, even with like a cocked wah, and you don't have to step on the wah to just have it all go crazy. So that's useful. And then the third loop is for, I use the Electro-Harmonix Superego, which is like the freeze, but it has extra features.
Okay.
And pretty much the only reason that's in a loop by itself is because obviously for it to freeze a chord, you have to play that chord. And then once you bypass it, you lose the chord. So the only way to get that sound back, like that drone that you created, is to play that chord again. But if you just bypass it with a looper, it's always going, and then you can just bring it back in whenever you want.
That's cool. Yeah, I'd heard that pedal. I wasn't familiar with what it did.
I can show you actually if you want. I've got everything set up.
Sure.
So it's got like a few different modes. I just have it in the latch mode. So let's say you just play a chord. Down there. Has this like glissando feature, which is really cool. So you can play a chord into it. This is just turning into an Electro-Harmonix pedal demo now, but I think it's a cool sound. So it's like every time you hit the switch, you play a new chord, and it, depending on how you have the glissando set, it will like slide you into the next chord. I think I don't know any other pedal that does that.
It's a little bit hard for me to hear it over the call. It'll probably be more apparent what it's doing when
I'm recording properly for you.
Yeah. But it's because the sound really it really gates it. But
no, you should be all right. It should have some good quality sound. It'll be in stereo as well. And what's nice about that is it's before all of the modulation section on my board. So if I was to hold a chord of that, I can then go, okay, let's make that stereo C1 on there.
Right.
Or like some crazy.
So let's go through the entire signal chain then, because the way you've set it up so far, I'm guessing that
we had 90 minutes though, right? I don't know if we might need 900.
Well, I mean, it's gonna be it's gonna be a different conversation, and that's okay. We can.
No, I'm more than happy to do that for you. That would be awesome. All right.
I was planning on asking about your pedal board and your use of effects anyways, because I was really into that Maggot Brain cover, which I think is the last thing you've uploaded to YouTube. I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, it is. Which was never supposed to be such a long period of nothing.
Well, it never is.
By combination of like working on new music and also keeping your mental health on track, which everyone needs to be like sure that they're doing, because I mean, something is unpredictable with music where you want to do that full time. You've got to have your head in the right place, because how can you create if it's not? So Maggot Brain went out. I was really, really stoked with how it turned out. I spent more time editing it than I probably spent doing anything else, because video effects pretty intense. It's on like streaming as well, the audio, because a few people were like, I just want to listen to it. So that's cool. But yeah, I've been working on a new album recently, which hopefully is going to be out later this year.
Exciting, man.
Yeah. There's lots of exciting stuff happening, actually. This week, I've been speaking with a guy called Ian Ratcliffe. He has a company called IR Custom Guitars. And he's building me a custom Stratocaster.
Cool.
It's going to be kind of inspired by, but not a replica of John's, with a few kind of like unique flavors, which you don't see on many Strats.
The 62 Strat?
It's going to be based on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is like, when you say 62 Strat as well, then you start to realize there's still like so many variations going on in that year. It's like, what kind of sunburst you want? Like, do you want a clear coat on the wood, or do you want the amber braid straight on the wood? Deciding on like, I don't know, all the finer details. It's kind of not based on one specific era Strat.
Yeah, I just meant in terms of the looks. You just said it's not exactly that.
But the thing that makes it the most different is it's going to have a bound neck like this one. So it's going to have like the white strip binding down the edges, which I think they did in like 1965. I think they for like 6 months or something, they put bound necks on them. And actually, that's what year this Jaguar is. So I guess it kind of makes sense. They probably just introduced the binding across the entire range.
Right. Well, that's nice, man. You get to make it exactly how you want it then, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's like a huge element of risk involved, because what you think you want or what you think you like, the reality might be totally different. Like, even down to the relicking, you know, it's difficult to say how much lacquer you want off the back of the neck. It either feels right or it doesn't. So I'm going for the less is more, because I can always, I mean, the intention is for like me to wear it in anyway. Like, chances are it's going to become like my main axe. So I'd rather kind of destroy it myself than have
I think you'll feel better about that. Yeah. You want to put your own marks on it, so
yeah, definitely.
For sure.
But I want a head start. I don't want it to be like a shiny new one. I want the guidelines I gave to him was like John's Strat, but how it was when he got it. I don't know if you've like seen the early photos of like John with the Strat in like 98.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, and it's like this, you know, the whole patch above the pick guard is like, you can just see it starting to kind of crack through, but it hasn't got this whole like Tipex smudge thing. Yeah, I want it to still look like a nice sunburst guitar that's in good condition with some nice thing. Oh, another thing I went for is the they're still Clusen tuning pegs, but they're the butterbean like clear plastic white ones, the same that a lot of Mustangs have and Jaguars.
Okay, yeah.
Because I've just always loved those, and I've always been kind of sad that this Jag doesn't have them. So I figured the Strat can have them, and if they don't look good on the Strat, then I can just swap these.
Right.
Over. And the Strat can have these vintage ones, and yeah.
Right. Yeah, I'm a sucker for those kind of tuning pegs too. I don't really like the new Fender ones at all.
They're not so. They're just so cute. That's like what makes vintage guitars nice, is that they're cute. Like with all the lacquer on them now, they just look like blocks of plastic to me. In the nicest possible way. I'm not saying that new guitars are bad, but if I like see a vintage guitar hanging up next to a brand new one, this one looks like wood and the new one doesn't.
Yeah, it's understandable. There's definitely a lot thicker and harder of a finish on them now. So the pedal board, I'm guessing that by what, like the pedals you just talked about in the loop switcher, that's either at the beginning or near the beginning of the chain.
It's kind of there's a few pedals before it, because like for example, the first bass is before, I've got like a few pedals out a bit because that's just where they work best. The DS2, the DS2 is the first pedal in that like drive section of the looper. So I mean, I'll go through the chain for you anyway. You'll work it out.
Yeah.
So the first thing is quite a new pedal for me, actually. It's the Digitech Freqout.
Okay.
Like, I mean, it's called a natural feedback creator, but it's definitely an artificial feedback creator. But it sounds natural, or it can sound natural, if you use it right. So I'm not going to go and like demo every pedal in depth and show you all the sounds they make. I guess I'll just show you how I have them set or how I use them. So yeah, this Freqout thing, I mean, here's the clean sound if I just like bring out a chord. And then with this, so even on a clean sound, it will.
And that's kind of like at the point where the chord is trailing off, it's starting to feedback on itself, kind of.
Yeah, you've got like the onset time, and it was actually set a little bit longer there because I was using it for some recording that needed.
Gotcha.
So I think I was using a guitar that sustained more. Actually, it really depends on the guitar, because if you've got a guitar that, I mean, this guitar naturally has like hardly any sustain, like most Jaguars. So we need it to kind of come in quicker, because if the note on the guitar dies out, the pedal won't do anything. So
I got you.
I kind of prefer using it. The thing is, like, a really thin sounding clean guitar is never going to feedback in the real world anyway. But if you have like a pretty hot compressor on at the same time, that gives you a tone that would then make it believable that it would feedback. So if I hit like the compressor, which I have set as like just a kind of a small boost, so it can sometimes sound unnatural. You have to be quite careful in how you like mute the note, because sometimes it will do like a glitchy thing that sounds more like a whammy pedal than natural feedback.
Right.
I want to make this pedal cooler than, like, you know, the Boss DF2, the distortion and feedbacker.
I've seen it. I've never played one.
So I had one of those for a while when I was a kid, just because I thought it looked like, the DS2, and it did feedback. And you play a chord or a note and you hold that pedal down, and it will pick up what like is the like loudest note that's coming out of the guitar, and it will feed back that note. But then no matter what you're doing on the guitar, that note's gonna stay the same. What I like about this one is it's actually doing it in real time, so you can bend the feedback and dive bomb the feedback, and you know, it's especially good. I probably wouldn't even use it live, but it's great for when I'm in the studio. I use impulse responses most of the time because I live in a really small cottage. I have neighbors both sides. Most of my recording is done like all throughout the night. And I don't think they want to hear like screeching feedback. And there's no good way to get natural feedback when you're just playing guitar through headphones.
No.
You know, so bear in mind that, I've got the guitar coming through the studio monitors now, but this can be done in complete silence. If you have the DS2 on and you hold a note, just kind of dies. But with this thing,
that's cool, man. Do you feel a difference, like if you were to play like say out loud and try and manipulate the actual feedback coming from a speaker versus playing that? Like, how does it feel?
Real feedback is definitely easier, and I think because with like actual real feedback, you already know it's going to be unpredictable, so you don't have any kind of expectations from it. But this thing, you know that it's going to follow the notes you're playing. It's not going to do its own thing. But that can kind of work against you sometimes, because
you're not going to get those like happy accidents.
You just get these like strange artifacts sometimes, and you know, they can be used as a cool effect, but they don't sound like feedback. I don't know, for example, if I'm like holding a chord out, if you slide down, the feedback will go like
right,
which would just never happen in real life. But it's a really good tool for like tracking solos in silence but still sound it. I mean, like John has just kind of shown us all that feedback can be extremely powerful in like guitar. So I mean, we already knew it anyway, but
are you talking about like the last two albums or
like I'm trying to think, like the solo in What You Thinking is a good example where the guitar is just screaming, and I remember hearing that Unlimited Love album for the first time, and I'd bought this Freakout pedal literally like a week before it came out, so I was like, whoa, that's crazy, because I've just been like messing around with these super feedbacky solos, and then John is like doing the same thing. So this just makes it possible to recreate that at very low volume.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely useful.
It's really cool.
I play in through headphones a lot too, mostly. Like when I'm playing at home, it's all through, like I'm going through a pedal board into my JFX and then like monitoring it through my interface,
which I think a lot of people do now. Like not everyone can afford like a huge detached house. I guess they're more common. in the States, but
or you know, like 4x12 cabs and Marshalls.
well, yeah, that's true as well. Although
Like,
I guess you can still get feedback through those like tiny Marshalls that like clip onto your trousers.
Right,
So
right.
It's more just like proximity and volume, isn't it?
Right. I just meant in terms of like, you know, using something like an XFX or some kind of modeling versus playing through like actual, you know, big amps or any amps really. I don't know. I remember like listening to the albums too, like Unlimited Love, and I'm not sure if it happens as much on the second one, but I thought, yeah, John was using like a lot more like feedback, harmonics, and a lot of bar work that he wasn't really doing before. I thought that was cool. I was wondering if he was like, if ever at all he pays attention to how many people on YouTube are trying to cover Chili Pepper songs. And
I would guess he's never seen a single Chili Peppers cover on YouTube.
yeah,
that would be
that is what I would guess too. But I'm just wondering like if he's at all aware of like that community or like his influence in that regard. And I was just in my head just thinking like, you know, what if he's just saying like, you suckers, like try and recreate this, you know?
Yeah, he's not actually making any of the music for his own enjoyment. He's just doing it to catch guitarists now. It's a trap.
Yeah.
Anyway, after that frequency pedal. Oh, actually, another really cool thing that can do, which I didn't mention, is like you can turn the control all the way up and only have the feedback, which is something that you can't do in real life. So that's a neat little feature.
Right. That is interesting.
So then it goes into the mini Jimi Hendrix fuzz space, and that is literally. Insane cleanup on that thing. Like you turn the volume knob down on the guitar by 1 millimeter and you're clean.
I'm guessing that the Digitech pedal is a true bypass then, if you have it in front.
Oh yeah, so the Digitech pedal can be true bypass or buffered because it's got a latching mode or a momentary mode. So it's actually cool because, you know, everyone says put the fuzz face first, and it technically is first because it's got the true bypass pedal in front of it. But if I switch that frequency pedal into the momentary mode, the fuzz face is now got the buffer before it, and it doesn't. It's still a cool sound, but it's, you know, it's nice to have the option. I mean,
exactly.
So then from there, I've got the MXR. I don't know if it's LA Machine or La Machine, but it's based on it's based on the Fox Tone machine.
Okay.
It's like it's an octave fuzz, but a really, really mean sounding one. I try and have every kind of effect I would ever want possible on this board. It's not like I'm not the kind of guitarist who just plays one style of music and uses those pedals.
Yeah.
I play so much different shit. Like sometimes it's pure like 70s funk, like the album I put out a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like reverb drenched ambient stuff with like modulated delays. So it's just good to have.
You do everything.
And then I go into the Boss Chromatic Tuner TU2. Do you want to hear that?
Yeah. That's okay.
Cool. Then I use the Marshall Compressor ED1.
Okay.
I've had this. It's like one of the first pedals I can remember owning, actually. It's lasted quite a long time. I probably got it when I was like 15. So I've had it over half my life. And what's nice is it's based on an old rack unit called Edward the Confessor. It was called Edward the Compressor. And that's what this is based on.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's like a multi-band compressor, so you can have it affecting the high frequencies less than the lows. It's got like an EQ section on it. But it's just a really nice musical compressor that I use as a slight boost. It's interesting because you set it to boost and it will boost if you're playing soft, but then when you play harder, it's actually like dipping. So,
right.
I mean, that's what a compressor does.
Right. You can like compensate for that though, like turn it up if you want to try and find unity.
Yeah, it's got like tons of headroom. I mean, you have to really kind of like fine tune the volume knob because it's quite sensitive.
Right.
But where I have it now, it's if I was to play like a really soft kind of arpeggiated thing. But then if I dig in on that sound, it sounds like the harder you play, the quieter it gets, kind of thing. But it's just keeping everything balanced. That's really nice when you want like a really chimey, clean sound that you wouldn't usually be able to get from Frusciante inspired rig. And I think that's the point I want to make here actually, is that a lot of my content is Frusciante related, and I have got a lot of Frusciante pedals, and I do have like the Frusciante amp rig, but I'm not trying to copy his sound. I'm trying to like take his sounds as little like mixing pots and then try and incorporate them into my own sounds. So it's just like John's tone is like the foundation for my tone to begin, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, perfectly. I was actually gonna like say something about that because already you've gone through like a number of pedals that he doesn't use or has never used, and I knew still that you do have a lot of the Frusciante stuff. So it's cool that you've gotten to the point though where, or like, I don't know, maybe you always had that sort of mindset, but I think a lot of people start off with like, I want to copy John's board exactly, and they don't really take in any inspiration from other sources, or maybe just do whatever they want to do. Although, some people do both.
I've always been like very much obsessed by the pedals that John uses, and I've always tried to own as many of them as possible. That is true. But I'm also very open to discovering other sounds that maybe no one that I'm aware of uses. Maybe it's just a pedal that caught my eye in a guitar store and I tried it out and I liked the sound and I bought it, and then it's been with me forever. So I think it's important, even if you like John's tone on this solo and the effect John uses here, you should also just try stuff out yourself, and certain things are gonna like resonate with you. Like I have a pedal on here which we'll get to, but I mean John uses and always has the Digitech PDS 1002.
Yeah.
And I'm using the PDS 2020, which is like the 1002 but with like a load of other features. So it's like if I was a John purist, I'd be using the blue one, but I'm me, so I'm using the red one.
Oh, that's good, man. I think that's what you should do. And at the end of the day, even something like that, it's just a digital delay. Like I know that some people will argue that one sounds really unique or something, or that's what he used on this song, but
it's a digital delay, but from the era where they were still technically analog.
Yeah.
Like it's an analog digital delay in a way. It has got quite a unique sound.
Yeah. I also I have a couple of those. Like I have those. I have the Line 6, obviously. I even I'm looking over my shoulder when my stuff's over there. I have the Effectron 2, like the blue rack unit that he used in the studio.
Nice.
Yeah, then that one, like I really like. I used to use the PDS for like Tell Me Baby delay, but I started using the Effectron 2. I really like that sound. So.
Nice. Oh, I'll be interested to like check one of those out.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I wish it was stereo though. Unfortunately, the way I have it set up, it's like in the effects loops of my Axe effects, so I can only put it on one channel. So I put it.
It's not a stereo effects loop.
No, it's a stereo effects loop, but like the
actual
Effectron is mono. Yeah, so
okay.
The way I have it set up is I have the Holy Grail on one side and the Effectron on the other side. So
nice. Well, man, that's very similar to what I'm doing with this PDS. So, I have this just on one side, and then I have my main reverb sound on the other side.
Yeah, if you like listen to the isolated guitar during Tell Me Baby, I think it's really cool. Like in the chorus, if you pan it left to right, you can hear you only hear really reverb on one side and you hear the rhythmic delay on the other side. So that's why I was like, oh, this sounds really cool.
Yeah, there's so many stereo effects going on that album. Well, not even just stereo effects, but electric guitars panned all over the place. I guess you've got the master tracks somewhere. You've heard those. Getting like the tab book for Stadium Arcadium, and it came with the CDs of just John and Flea's parts, and that was like the most exciting 2 hours of my life, just listening to those.
So is that where those came from then, like those videos on YouTube?
Yeah, well, there are some now which are just the guitar without the bass, and I don't know where those are from, but the ones where it's John and Flea's parts, I guess originally it was originally from the tab book, came with them on CD. Cool. Like such a cool touch. Like more artists do that.
Yeah.
I've always loved listening to the isolated parts.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Even just to hear like the noise in between, like you can hear stuff that's going on in the room. Like there's like all sorts of stuff you can discover just from listening to the isolated parts, even if it's not something to do with how it's played or what effect on it, like little Easter eggs.
Yeah. Little mistakes. It's really cool. The thing that I always thought was like, I don't know, the thing that was the most impressive about it to me, like even if you listen to just John's like parts on his own, like especially the Stadium Arcadium, it still sounds like a song, and it's like it goes through like so many changes. Like you could just listen to that on its own, and it's
man.
And
it's listening to that, the stems from that album, or like the guitar master tracks, played a massive part in shaping where I took my music, because a lot of my music is very like dense, lots of layers of guitar, like around each other, almost like an orchestra or a guitar orchestra.
Okay.
Anyway, do you want to go on to the next pedal? Because
Yeah.
I don't know how much time we have, but after the compressor, that's where we go to the loop switcher.
Okay.
So in loop 1, we've just got the Pitch Fork, and I mean, I might be able to show you actually the noise that I was trying to get rid of by keeping it out of the signal chain. So like,
I wanted to ask about that because I have that pedal too, and like I find the noise. Well, I don't know if are you using it with the expression pedal too?
No. I'm talking about when it's bypassed. It's like a really high frequency buzz. So I have it. Yeah. If I engage the big muff or something, obviously that's going to increase the noise floor. Just some here. But then if I put the Pitch Fork in, I don't know if it's going to pick it up. I'll amplify even more with the micro amp.
Good.
It's the kind of noise that you're only going to notice it when you're not playing, and you're only going to notice certain pedals. But as soon as you know it's there,
it's hard not to.
Probably the thing is as well. It's like it's probably not just noise that it's doing to your tone as well. It must be like it's probably like digitizing the whole signal somehow. I don't know if it has like a analog drive through or anything. I guess it does because it has a blend control, but I just love what the pedal can do, but I never liked the bypass, so I just keep it out of the way. I mean, I have a Fender Deluxe Reverb actually, which, because it's such a bright amp, even when that's clean, the Pitch Fork makes that buzz like crazy, but you don't know through a Marshall because it's so much darker. Like the Marshall doesn't
right.
that treble. But through a bright amp, you notice it a lot. And I'm really sensitive to stuff like hums and buzzes. Oh, speak of the devil.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't want that either. The only thing I can think of though, like obviously placing it in a loop is a fine solution, but sometimes I've found just moving things around that it could be like an impedance thing. Like it could be what coming before it that's not necessarily causing it.
I mean, when I find a problem with a pedal or with my rig, I troubleshoot it like a bitch. I definitely would have tried having it isolated with nothing else, a buffer before it or a buffer after it, or sandwiching it between two buffers. The pedal just makes that noise. I think I even contacted EHX about it, and they said that it's normal and it's like that's just like the way it is.
Right.
But you know, probably 99% of I'm probably the only person that's ever noticed the noise. You know, I mean, you say you never noticed it, right?
Well, I've noticed it in certain situations, but for me, it was more like I'm using the expression pedal. Like sometimes what I'll do with it is like have it like just set an octave up, like completely wet, but like on its own channel, sort of. So that when I go heel down at the expression pedal, it's not producing any signal, but it's still technically like your signal's going through it. That's sometimes when I would hear something like that.
Oh, okay.
But if I use it,
pedal on all the time and use the expression as a blend. Okay.
Yeah. But like if I bypass it, it would go away. It's just like when it's engaged but out.
I'm guessing that when the pedal's bypassed, that probably is the same as when it's on, but with the blend down. I don't know how the circuit works, but I know that it gives you this noise that I hate. So
yeah. Well, it's all good. You've got rid of it, so
yeah. And this doesn't really have just like one use for me. It can be anything.
Yeah, you can do a lot with it.
Yeah, I use it if I'm building like loops. I can just immediately just create a bass part, you know. Or, you know, you can create like hoggy kind of organ stuff with octave up and octave down and in the dry. 2 octaves down and up. Or if you go just octave up and turn down the blends, you can kind of like emulate a 12-string guitar kind of thing. I just started thinking about copyright strikes when I played that. I'm guessing you want me to stay away from the well-known riffs.
It's okay. My channel's not even monetized, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and mine isn't either, actually. You need some crazy amount of watch hours.
I actually like just recently passed the like 1,000 subs and the number of watch hours you need, but you still need to like do an application. I haven't bothered.
Oh, really? I've got the right amount of followers, but I'm like nowhere near the watch hours yet.
I think it's because I uploaded a lot of the backing tracks. Like pretty much, I made backing tracks for every album except Mother's Milk that John's on. And
hey, good idea. I might do the same.
Yeah, a lot of them aren't. Like a lot of them still just have like a couple hundred views. So most of the views came from videos that I made, except for the Can't Stop video got really popular. The Can't Stop backing track, I think, has like 19,000 views. Yeah, but all the rest are relatively low. But I wasn't sure. It's like if a lot of the watch hours are coming from like copyright material, it might not be eligible anyways. So I'm like not really too concerned about it, and I don't think I'll be making like any money off YouTube anytime soon anyway. So,
well, I guess so, but you never know. Maybe one of your videos is just gonna blow up one day, and you'll be happy.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We'll see. I'll have to make some more then.
Yeah,
just challenge.
The same with me. I don't think people realize how much effort goes into making even a 10-minute YouTube video. It's crazy. Like sometimes
even a 5-minute video
to clean the room, you know, to make it look acceptable.
Yeah, I've been trying to put effort towards making the creation of content simpler and more straightforward, so it's just like easier to get started and do it. I don't know that I've succeeded at that yet though, but I'm gonna keep trying.
It's not easy. The one issue I always have is when I'm usually filming the video with my phone and then recording onto Logic, and then you've got to sync the video with the audio. I find that if it's longer than like a 3 or 4 minute song, it always drifts out of time. And
yes.
I've been able to figure out why. Like the settings on my camera are correct, the settings on Logic are correct, as far as I believe. I guess they're not if it's not syncing up. But
yeah, I've been trying to solve that same problem too, even with like the podcast episodes that I've edited so far.
Oh, really?
I've needed to cut them like every 10 minutes almost to like reline it up.
It's definitely something to do with the frame rate. I mean, it's basically to do with, like the sample rate that the camera is capturing the audio, or the sample rate of the camera is not matching the audio. But I don't know, man. It's a weird thing.
Yeah, but it really like I see a lot of videos on social media or whatever where like people's lips don't line up with the audio, or maybe I don't know, if I feel like guitar players are probably a bit more conscious of it, but anytime I see that, it really bugs me. So like I can't upload something if like the words aren't synced with my lips
when you're watching, you spend the first 5 minutes thinking like it's a problem with your stuff, and you like refresh the page and like restart the computer and everything, and then you realize it's just that one video.
Yeah. But it's really time consuming to correct that, especially if it's like a really long video.
Yeah, it's a pain in the ass. It's one of the biggest deterrents for me is just the editing, because I know that it's going to be out of sync, and I don't know. It's not enough of a reason to not do it, and I should do more.
Yeah,
and you should do more as well, man.
Thanks. I know you're right, but if it was more about actually just like doing what you needed to do and less about just the little stuff that comes along with it that you have to do but you don't really want to do, then it definitely would be easier. Yeah.
Anyway, pedals. Now we're in the second loop. So the first pedal is the Boss DS2, which, no surprise, I have set on the turbo mode.
Right.
Sounds like this. Oh, I bet you weren't expecting that chord, were you?
No.
But I mean, again, this my first ever pedal was a DS2, and it wasn't because of John, it was because of Kurt Cobain. So like, first picked up the guitar, I was 12, I was 11 when I started playing bass, and then I moved to stick string when I was 12, and for Christmas that year I asked for a DS2 and an electro-harmonic small clone because I wanted Kurt Cobain's rig. And it was only later that I realized that actually that was too easy and I needed a bigger rig to try and get hold of. I mean, it's crazy. Right. You can buy two pedals and have Kurt's entire FX chip pretty much. But it was just chance. I remember like the feeling of, I was like, when I first discovered the Chili Peppers in like 2002, because of the Can't Stop video, I was always sitting watching like the MTV2 music channel, and I remember By the Way and Can't Stop videos always being shown, and I became obsessed with the band. I was like, I want to be like that guitar player. And I found out that he used the DS2, and I was like, wow,
very cool.
I already have it.
Yeah. It's awesome.
So that was nice. The only thing I had to do was switch it on to mode 2, because I was always using my Kurt Cobain mode.
Yeah.
So then from DS2, it goes into, it's the Germanium Fuzzrite, and this is the JFX by Triungulo Lab. And I also use this one, I'm using the True Tone power supplies, CS12, and they have a voltage sag output.
Yeah.
And I'm sagging the voltage down to about 4.5 or 5 volts because I feel like that's where this pedal responds best.
Okay. Haven't tried that.
I really like it when you dig in and the input kind of overloads a bit. And I feel like it's too responsive when you're feeding it with the full 9 volts. So and of course, that pedal, along with the DS2, kind of become like this magic synthy solo pro. And it, I mean, the Fuzzrite took me on quite a journey. That all started, I mean, I'm very good friends with Galuccio. He saw these Triungulo Lab pedals. And him and I used to just speak on Skype for like hours and hours and hours at a time, talking about John's tones and watching like every crowd shot and side stage shot YouTube video of the Chili Peppers performing, just trying to like find exactly what John was using and when, and how the tone changes when he engages the Fuzzrite, like really deeply analyzing it.
Yeah.
And it took quite a while to figure out that it sounds a certain way for John because he's always got the signal phase inverted. I'll kind of get to that later because I've got a box doing it. But one that the tone that comes to mind is the intro to their last Cigale show.
Yeah.
And I mean, for those of you who need reminding what that is. And yes, I probably played for a bit too long then, but that's how nice it is to play. Like, I could play that tone all day. Yeah. It's like this, there's this like, I guess this really kind of, if it was like on a clean tone, you'd probably describe it as honky, like a really hot mid frequency that jumps out when those two pedals are combined, and it makes your leads sound like a synthesizer or something. And it's so responsive to your picking. Like the attack on the note when you pick. It's like whatever note you're sustaining, it's almost as if it knows you're about to pick a note, and it like gives you space to pick the next note, and it blooms. It's such a beautiful tone. I guess you can't really hear it now, but you will on the.
Yeah, I keep thinking to myself, like, every time you play something, I feel like I'm not reacting at all because, like, obviously it sounds a lot different than it will.
Editing some photos of you just throwing on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to, react to something that you can't really fully hear hear enough to appreciate.
Yeah, I know what you mean. You'll have to just show your appreciation in the description or something.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I always thought that. Well, like, especially I feel like that last Cigale intro is the one that's like most associated with the Fuzzrite, but like you're talking about that phase inversion thing, because to me, like, just the Fuzzrite and the DS2 didn't sound quite right.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I'll show that now. We haven't got to my phase inverting box yet, but because we're on the DS2 and the Fuzzrite, I'll show you what I'm talking about. I believe
I watched the video where you guys did explain this in
a long video,
detail.
So I'll keep this to the point. Basically, John has always had a phase inverted signal chain. So back in the day when he had a small board, Californication era, his CU1 was always set in high mode. And in high mode, you're introducing a phase inverting op amp. So your phase is flipped. So high mode is a inverted signal phase to low mode. Low mode is just the same as having no CU1. Then in the Stadium Arcadium era, John was always using low mode. So easy to think, okay, his phase isn't inverted. However, the Gaia tone tremolo that he's using, that orange one, inverts phase when it's bypassed. and now he's back to using high mode again. So he's always had an inverted phase throughout his, from guitar to amp. And under most circumstances, inverting the phase of a mono signal bar doesn't do anything. So I've got a pedal here that is just a buffer that uses a phase inverting op amp.
Is it?
And on the clean sound, it's not going to do anything. Okay, so I'm just going to strum and toggle it on and off. It literally does nothing. And that's because I've got symmetrical waveform, because I've just got a clean guitar going through a load of cables and to the out.
Yeah, you're not, there's no clipping really. And
exactly.
Definitely not asymmetrical clipping.
Yeah. So then the thing is that when you use the DS2 by itself, because you're introducing so much clipping, that clipping is also having to interact with the distortion coming from the amps, that I guess starts to create some asymmetrical clipping of its own. So the DS2, while toggling this phase inverting thing on and off, sounds like this. It's not a huge difference, but you know how sometimes if you're using fuzz pedals, certain notes, when they ring out, they sound like they're almost just imploding on themselves. They just appear and then come back. If you invert this phase, or I guess I should call it polarity, if you invert the polarity of that signal, you're going to hear the opposite. So whatever was sounding farty and like it was being swallowed up by the pedal, when you invert the polarity of the signal after it, it's going to come to life the same amount that it was dipping, if that makes sense.
Right,
so
right.
It becomes way more present. And this became most apparent to me with this combination of Fuzzrite and DS2. So I'm just going to go back to the regular non-phase inverted setting. So I'm using a C1, which is in low mode, which basically just means no phase inversion. And if I play that La Cigale thing, yeah, I mean, it's close. It sounds pretty similar. So now, but it's not quite there. It, out of context, you think it's close, but then you listen to the real thing, and the real thing is has way more bass. It's really mid-scooped. It's wider. It sounds more stereo. What am I doing wrong? I'm using the same tube pedals. They're wired in the same order. There's no buffers between them that John's got. Same amps, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to now play this riff again, and I'm going to toggle just a phase inverting buffer. I feel bad that you can't hear it again.
That's okay.
I guarantee. I mean, I've actually even raised this discussion on the Gear Page forum, guitar forum.
Yeah.
And people just think I'm crazy, and they say it's impossible for a sound to change just by inverting its phase. Like, just to clarify, we're not talking about, you know, using 2 amps and then like inverting one of them so the amps are out of phase. This is all before you hit the amps input.
Yeah, the way I think people need to visualize it is, you know, like, if, say, we had a perfectly symmetrical sine wave, like the distance from the center point to the peak of the wave is going to be the same. Like if you're going from the top to the bottom, you start clipping that signal, it's going to get like shorter, more squared off, or whatever. Things clip in different ways. But if we're looking at it visually, it's clipping asymmetrically. You're either clipping more off the top or more off the bottom. So that's what's happening in the case of this. It's some sort of asymmetrical clipping, because what you're doing is when you're flipping the phase, like you're saying, you're basically flipping that wave upside down. So if it was taller at the top and shorter at the bottom, it's now going to be, you know, taller at the bottom, shorter at the top, and that's going to be why it sounds different.
The thing is, as well, is it all depends on your amp. So, for example, with my Fender Deluxe Reverb, doing this in phase invert thing barely has any effect on it at all. And I guess it just has all to do with the gain structure of the preamp.
Well, I guess in that case, if you were to look at the signal coming like out of the amplifier on, say, an oscilloscope, at that point it wouldn't be like asymmetrical if it's not having a change, right?
Yeah, it does. And it's the same with my Orange. I have an Orange AD30 head, and that one's happy to behave whatever. Maybe a very slight shift in EQ, but nothing near as drastic as this. And then it's like the Jubilee, it's the most obvious one. Like in one mode, it just sounds wrong, and in one, it sounds right. And interestingly, because I haven't even talked about what I'm actually going through here. It's a mini Jubilee on the left, and a hand-wired Plexi Super Lead on the right with the bright cap removed. So it's more like a super bass.
Okay.
And yeah, the Jubilee is like, as you expect. The Plexi, for whatever reason, is completely the opposite. So the Plexi has the tone that I want when the signals are not flipped. So what I have to do is flip it again before I get to the amp from the last pedal, and then invert the phase after the amp to put it back in phase with the Jubilee. It sounds really complicated, but essentially all I'm doing is inverting the input of the Jubilee and then putting the amps back in phase after the speakers.
Right.
The only reason I'm having to do that is because, like in John's case, he used the major, and the major is a phase inverted amplifier. Like it has an uneven number of gain stages.
Yeah.
So naturally it inverts the phase, and that's why it works for John. That's why it did work. I mean, there's no way that he sat down and calculated this. It's definitely just like a happy accident that worked in his favor. Like I doubt even Dave Lee knew, let alone John, that Gaiatone tremolo inverted phase. I mean, I'd be surprised if they even know that the CE1's high and low invert phase. Because at face value, it's just that one has more gain than the other. You don't like a shift in phase or anything like that. But yeah. So that's that. That's like a really important thing that not enough guitar players know about. I mean, this would go way beyond just the Frusciante community. Like, think how many guitarists like to stack different drive pedals together, and automatically you're creating asymmetrical clipping by doing that. I mean, most of the time. I don't know if that's like always, but you know, you have two different drive circuits going on. and some people say, oh, you need to stack this pedal into a clone. And then someone goes, oh, well, I did that and it sounded all farty.
Right.
And I think that, when someone like has a boost pedal or something after their distortions, it can either make the sound brighter or darker. And some people swear by this pedal because it puts like a magic on it, like the EP booster or something like that. And other people will swear by this other one. And I think that if they just had like a phase invert after their drive, they would be able to like
make anything work.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, like if two pedals don't stack nicely and they sound like they're like, like caving in, invert the phase, they're gonna fucking explode outwards.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's just the funny thing about people comparing, like, oh, like this works for me, this, what works for you doesn't work for me, kind of thing. It's almost silly to have these discussions because there's so many variables.
It's almost as important as having certain buffers, because someone could try this Fuzz bass and go, no, it doesn't clean up, but it's because they are the buffer.
Yeah, there's too many variables, man.
Yeah.
All
right. Anyway, next one is it's another Triungulo lab, and it's the Scar Fuzz, which is based on the Frusciante Big Muff, the one that John used. Not the same one he's using now, but the one he did use the other time. And this is just and another huge discussion among Frusciante fans, I would probably say more than the Cigale intro, is the Stratocaster intro.
Right.
And I think maybe you're in the Fuzz Factory camp. Is that right?
Yeah, I think at some point I thought maybe it was the Fuzz Factory into the DS2, and then I started to think that maybe it was the Fuzz Factory into the Big Muff.
So I am just convinced that it's the DS2, the Big Muff, and the Micro Amp, which are the pedals that he had in the PSM5. Like the Fuzz Factory was just off to the side, and it wouldn't have been that route because it doesn't work with the buffer.
Yeah, exactly. I think the only reason I think that is just because that's what he had on the board at the time, and it's at like the way that I like to use the Fuzz Factory is to sort of set it on the edge where it's like not completely feeding back, but maybe a little bit. But if I turn, the gate or the comp just a little bit, it would kind of start to cut out. And that's sort of the sound I'm hearing. But again, it's like it could, like right before he starts playing, it's definitely feeding back. But it's also going to be feeding back if he's like using those pedals, like you say. Like anytime you're using the Big Muff and the DS2, there's a lot of noise anyways. But
well, also it could even just be something like, the feedback or you hear is just the DS2, and then he hits the Big Muff as soon as he starts playing. It can even be like that. So I mean, just for the sake of letting people hear this, I'll just play a little bit of that with what I think was used, and then that can be something people discuss. I don't have a Fuzz Factory here to do a comparison, although I did do a video with Will when I visited it, where we did like one recording with the Fuzz Factory and one with the DS2 Big Muff and Micro Amp. I think the Micro Amp's a really important one actually, because when that's before the Big Muff, you're obviously like boosting the input to the big muff and it compresses more, and that's when you get more of that pick attack, and that's something that's very present in the Slane Castle intro. Although actually maybe I'm wrong, because I think he had the micro amp after the big muff in those days.
I'm not sure.
Either way, to me, this is the tone, and I can have all three of them on and then engage them with one click of the looper. So obviously I'm playing it on a Jaguar, so it's not going to sound exactly the same. Right.
That was enough to come through the headphones pretty good.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, I could hear that one a bit more.
Yeah, because the big muff's so bright. I have the tone control like almost maxed out, and I think that's one of the giveaways of that intro tone, the way it's EQ'd.
Yeah,
because the big muff had such a distinctive scoop and treble frequency when the tone's turned up.
Right.
And I really hear that in the Slane Castle intro. But again, it's like, it's not all about creating John's tones. This Scarf Fuzz has like a second switch on it, which when you... So it's kind of like a big muff and a fuzz factory. Like it relates and goes wild. And it's got like a mid boost on there as well. So you can, if you feel like the big muff doesn't cut through enough, you can boost the mids.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I think I remember seeing something about that when Will put it out. I was talking to him briefly about it because I always thought it would be cool to combine like a fuzz factory and a big muff. I sort of had that. I mentioned that to him at the time. I had this idea to do that, or like somehow add this sort of like functionality of a fuzz factory to the big muff and call it a muff factory.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe one of these days I'll see if I can do that. I couldn't quite. I wasn't sure how to approach that before, but I just always thought that was funny.
Yeah, I think it's all of this. The oscillations and stuff probably just happened completely by accident. Like it's as well, like, I mean, what's really cool actually about it as well is it has a clean blend. So you can have like, I mean, you know, a wild big muff tone is pretty wild anyway. But then you can blend the clean in with it as well.
I imagine that's cool for like, you know, if you like to have the tone control up, but don't want it to be like super thin, you could add some of the low end back for your clean
really
tone. Yeah,
it's also like, really good for like if you're playing complex chords, because sometimes like company chords can get really, really muddy with a fuzz. You know, like and you turn the cleaner. beautiful. It's really good.
So that you have all this stuff is in the loop so far, right? DS2, Fuzzrite, Big Muff, and you have the wah in there too.
Yeah,
and the micro amp.
Yeah, I'm the micro amp. Yeah,
Okay.
the order is DS2, Fuzzrite, then micro amp, because I want the micro amp to push the Big Muff.
Okay.
And then from the Big Muff to the wah, and that's the WHX that Will makes, which is amazing. Let me just check I have the volume controller. Yeah, I do. Sometimes I wish these had more boost. Everyone's asking for less boost, but
yeah.
I'm driving right step on the wire and I'm like, where's all the fucking rootiness? So of course, you know, it wouldn't be a Frusciante inspired guitar video if I didn't, I don't know, do something with the DS2 and the wah just to show that, which is I probably should have had the reverb on by this point. I'm using the Strymon Flint and I just have it on the left channel.
Okay.
So that's kind of like, you know, it's me putting my own spin on John Frusciante great idea.
Yeah. That's good, man. I like that. I think we're gonna have to do a part 2 to get through the. We only made it through like the drive section of your board.
Yeah, that's crazy, man.
That's okay though. I have actually a very similar setup, at least in terms of kind of what you're doing there with the loop. I also have the DS2. Actually, I have it in the loop of the noise suppressor.
Okay.
So basically, I have a loop that goes into the noise suppressor, and then in the noise suppressor is a loop of the DS2. The DS2 into my Empyrean pedal, which I'm coming in to the first effects loop, so I have the Fuzz Factory outside of that because it's separate with a loop, but it's going DS2 into the Fuzzrite, into the Big Muff and the micro amp. And there's a toggle switch there, so I can switch the order if I want to put the micro amp first or second. But typically I have it after. And I guess that's it. I have the wah actually, and then an additional micro amp in a separate loop. And that was one thing I wanted to ask you about. Like you mentioned it, that it's like cool to be able to kick on, you know, all that distortion at once, but also like a cocked wah, even if you want. And I can see some appeal to that. I guess I can do both because I can have like my MIDI. Sorry, my loop switcher is also a MIDI controller, and I can program it so like you can engage 2 loops at once or whatever. But I like having the ability to have the wah on its own too. So I was wondering if do you ever find like in a situation where like you wanted to, I guess you could just kick on the distortion after, but is there ever a time where you just wish you could like have the wah and the fuzz or the distortion separate?
The only reason I've ever wanted that is because of the tone suck from the wah when it's off. There's a tiny, I mean, this wah that I'm using uses exactly the same buffer as the V1 did, and there's a tiny drop in volume when I engage the loop. That's the only reason I would ever want that separate, just to have the option of being able to use the drives, you know, step on the loop without there being that. But in terms of like using the wire, no. To be honest, I spend most of my time with the loop engaged, and I just tap dance the pedals one at a time. I usually use the looper as a quick way of turning them all off.
Right.
You know, like I can go DS2, pick Muff, right around, Fuzz, one, and then it's all up in one clip.
Yeah, that's the best thing about a switcher, man. That's what I like anyways.
But yeah, and you know, it's like, yeah, if I'm going to use DS2 and a cocked wire, for example, like then you just set that sound up, and but it's easy enough to just switch the DS2 off and you're back to the wire.
Yeah, that's true. It's definitely nice though. Like what you've got set up, I like that. I think more people should do that. Like, you know, put a few pedals, like your few distortion pedals in a loop. Basically, the way I have mine set up is like each loop is like a type of effect, like distortion, filter, modulation, delay, and then it's like because that's, you know, typically I'm not going to be using like 2 modulation pedals at the same time, although like sometimes that can be cool. Usually I'm like, okay, I'm going to use this one and this one, like this delay, this modulation, and it's like you can introduce each of those things. I think some people have I was just going to say
sorry, you go.
I was just going to say, I think some people have the misconception when it comes to these two things, like loop switchers and power supplies, that it's like each individual loop has to be like one pedal, and for a power supply, like it has to be only going to one pedal, because like, especially with drive pedals, they're not taking up a lot of current. They're like, I'll just daisy chain them off my power supply, like as long as there's enough current from like one output. And then same thing with the loops. It's like, doesn't have to be just one pedal. Put a few in there, you know, then you can turn on a few at once, turn them off at once. Really useful.
Yeah, I mean, and worked. I've tried it all. Like I used to use daisy chains. I used to use more loops and stuff. Then I used to find if I was daisy chaining stuff, but pedals that were in separate loops from each other, that could create ground out, because you've got multiple ground.
Yeah, I'm doing it in the same loop, I guess is what I'm saying. Like,
oh yeah, in the same loop, it's fine, definitely.
Yeah, but just to like, you know, if say you have a Voodoo Labs that has 8 outputs, and you have like 6 modulation effects or like modulation delay, something that has a significant power requirement and needs its own isolated supply, you know, you don't need to go out and get another supply to like power all your distortion pedals. You can probably run those off one output on a daisy chain and be fine.
You know what, as well, I've started doing recently. So I used to run, I'm running 2 True Tone CS12s. I can only use like 11. They have 12 outputs, but I can only use 11 of them because 2 of them are 18.
Oh, okay.
But I bought the gig rig, little, like, you know, he does the modular power supply system, and he does a little box called the isolator, which just takes 9-volt DC in and splits it into 4 isolated outputs. So it's more expensive than a daisy chain, but it's nowhere near as expensive as a new supply.
Right. So you're running that off the old one?
I run 1 isolator off each CS12,
right,
which gives me like an extra 3 isolated outputs on each one.
Right. That makes sense. Pretty much the same principle.
Same principle, but means you can power anything, even if they're in separate loops or separate signal paths.
Right.
Which is nice.
Yeah, that's cool. Cool, man. I'm looking forward to hearing the recording when you can send me the file when I can hear more of it, because
Yeah.
if it's anything like your Mega Brain cover, the tone's gonna be great, because I was really impressed by that.
Well,
and just your ability to kind of like navigate that much effect while improvising and making it all sound sort of like coherent and build from start to finish is really cool.
yeah, I mean, people say when when they're a competent guitarist, that the guitar feels like an extension of them. And I do feel that it extends beyond the guitar. And I also feel like the pedals are all part of that, I guess, because I've just, I've had a huge pedal board for longer than I've not had a huge pedal board.
Right.
So I just, I mean, I know the sound in my head. I know what I'm feeling. If I'm feeling mellow, then I'll, straight away just put on that, and start playing with some ambient reverb and tape delay. It's like knowing what pedals to use is just like knowing what picking dynamics to use when you're improvising a solo or something. To me, it's just like an extension of that.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. Well, hey, thanks again. And like I said, we'll have to do at least a part 2 where you get through the rest of the board.
Yeah, man.
Who knows? At
Shall
this
I
rate,
just for the sake of the people who are watching this, so they know exactly what they've been hearing, I'll just pan the camera down and show the board.
Sure. And who knows? Even at this rate, it might need a part 3. I don't know how big the rest of this board is.
There we go. That's what we're dealing with.
Yeah. Nice, man. All right. Well, thanks again, eh? Thanks for doing this. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Talk to the hand. Yeah, man. No, it's been really fun.
Yeah.
This is like my favorite thing to talk about, so it's an absolute
I can
pleasure.
tell. Yeah, it's good, man. It's good. I like talking about it too.
Thought so.
All right.
Well, I'll see you for part 2, man. Take it easy.
Sounds good. Take care.